Hello everybody, I'm back again, here to do another video. This video is going to be a collection video. My collection for this collection video for 2016 edition is going to be my Super Nintendo collection. Alright, so without further ado, let's get started. These are going to be in alphabetical order, unless I messed them up somehow, but anyway. Oh, and also, I guess I'll show these as well. Must have forgotten to get these, but anyway, I have my Super Game Boy right here. And I'm also going to show you the 3 Super Famicom games I have, since that's the Japanese Super Nintendo. They are Contra Spirits, which is Contra 3, Super Donkey Kong, which is Donkey Kong Country, and Super Donkey Kong 2, which is Donkey Kong Country 2. All in Japanese. Okay, now let's get to the North American Super Nintendo games. Starting off with American Gladiators, which I believe B. Jockert has a video of this up on YouTube. It's based off of the sports game show. And next is a movie-based game, Batman Returns, based off of the movie of the same name, starring Michael Keaton reprising his role as Batman. And of course there was also Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman and Danny DeVito as the Penguin. Next up, Bobby's World, which is based off of the TV show that was created by Howie Mandel. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention, a few of these I still have the boxes for, but I'm just going to show you the cartridges. Next one up is Bubsy, which isn't really, one of the most excuse me. It's not it's not a game that a lot of people really enjoyed, and the series probably got worse over time, because I heard Bubsy 3D was terrible, and I never played that. This one you might say is out of order, but I'm only saying this because it doesn't say, and I'll show you right now, this is Tiny Toon Adventures Buster Bust Loose. But on the top of it, all it says is Buster Bust Loose, and that's how I go by the top. And that's how I go by when putting the games in order. Is what they say on the top. So that one is a little bit out of order, but it only, like I said, it only says Buster Bust Loose at the top, and that's why I'm showing it next. So let's hope you understand me. This one I have the box for, but I'm only going to show the cartridge like I said. And it's a game that B. Jockert did a review on YouTube as well, and that is Super Castlevania 4. Well known for its great controls, where you can whip in all 8 directions and swing your whip around. And up next is kind of a rare game, and this one is just the cartridge only, and that is Castlevania Dracula X, which you've seen me do on YouTube before. Up next, Contra 3: The Alien Wars, which I already showed you the Super Famicom version. The Super Famicom version has unlimited continues, but the North American version only has 3 continues, I think, or 5 or 7, maybe something like that. Anyway, next up is Cool Spot, which I believe Matthew V21688 has on the Sega Genesis. Up next is another movie-based game, and it is Disney's Aladdin. Or, here you go. And I've beaten that, I believe. Up next is probably one of the most well-known trilogy of video games ever. But the first one in this particular franchise for my copy of it, which really wasn't mine to begin with, but I guess it's mine now. The label for it is kind of messed up, so I may have to get a different label for this. And that is Donkey Kong Country. Which I've 100%ed this game before. And by the way, just to mention this, the Craig S. 1996 Entertainment Network did a 2016 playthrough of this game on YouTube of Donkey Kong Country. Up next is its sequel, Donkey Kong Country 2, which to some people is the best Donkey Kong game on the Super Nintendo. I guess I'm up there. This is a great game, though. I mean, and this one I've 100%ed before too. Next up, the third game, Donkey Kong Country 3, which not a bad game. It is good, but maybe not a lot of people really liked it as much as the first two, and it may also be in part due to the fact that this game came out the same year that the Nintendo 64 came out, and everybody was trying to save up money for that. But it is good. By the way, all 3 of the Donkey Kong Country games were also remade for the Game Boy Advance, and the first one, at least in North America, had a Game Boy Color release, which I used to have that one. Up next is Earthworm Jim, which I've not beaten. This might be a comical game, though, if you know what I mean. Funny game. Ow! That's what Earthworm Jim says himself. And next is a sequel, Earthworm Jim 2, which this one I've not beaten yet either. There is another one out for the N64, Earthworm Jim 3D, I think. But I don't have that. And up next, and this one I have the box for, but I'm only going to show you the cartridge, and that is Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, Eye of the Beholder, or just Eye of the Beholder. Which I only played once, I think, but I don't know if you can actually beat that game, really, but anyway. Next up is a game show-based game, and that is Family Feud, which this was based off of the Ray Combs era from 1988 till 1994. If I'm correct. Next up is Final Fantasy II, which is actually Final Fantasy IV. But in North America, it's Final Fantasy II, and maybe other parts of the world too, like the Power region and stuff. I'm not really good at RPGs, but I guess they're just hard for me. Final Fantasy III is up next. And up next is a game that my friend Rodney1279 did on both YouTube and Dailymotion, and that is F-Zero, which is a racing game, space racing game. And there's one game on the N64 called F-Zero X, and maybe one on the GameCube. I might be called F-Zero GX, something like that, maybe. This F-Zero's the first one's the only one I have for the franchise. Up next is a really rare game. I'm talking really rare. Really rare. I'm not going to say how much I paid for this, but I did pay a lot of money for this one. That is Hagani, The Final Conflict. Really rare game. It's even more rare. It's even more expensive if you get it. If you get a complete in box copy of it. Speaking of complete in box, I do have this one boxed as well. But again, I'm only showing the cartridge, and that is Jeopardy, which I do have one game of this posted up on YouTube. So if you want to check that out, you can. Up next, Jeopardy Deluxe Edition, which this one I have not done yet on YouTube, I don't think. I might try to start a run for this game. Up next is kind of a tough... Well, all Jeopardy games are hard to me, or a lot of them are anyway. I've never won at any of these Super Nintendo games by myself. But this next one is the Sports Edition. Which, this one is probably the one of the Super Nintendo games, I'm probably the worst at, maybe. Because I don't really follow sports that much. Or sports maybe at all. Or do I follow sports? Anyway, this one I really haven't seen, except maybe for one time, and that was the day I picked it up. This one might not be too common. And let me read it. It is The Jetsons' Invasion of the Planet Pirates. Based off of the cartoon show, The Jetsons, that was on many years ago. Up next, I guess this is a popular fighting game, and that is Killer Instinct. Which was made by Rareware, who did the Donkey Kong Country trilogy and other games on N64 like GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, and even Mickey Speedway USA. Next up is another movie-based game, and I have beaten this before, but it has been years since that happened, and that is The Lion King. Alright, next up is another trilogy of games. That is the Mega Man X trilogy. Starting off with the first one. And this is the second one, which is hard to find. And the third one, even more hard to find probably. But the first game is probably the most common of the X games. But I don't think I've beaten any of the... I may not have beaten a Mega Man game in my whole life, actually. But, I think the one that's the easiest is probably X1. Up next is another game that's hard to find, and that is Ninja Gaiden Trilogy, which I I think I've done maybe the first game on this on my channel. I have to remember. I have to take a look. I may have done it for a Gaiden series, actually. For a Gaiden video. Back in maybe like 2014, 2013, maybe. Up next is one that I've had for a long time, but this one's a little weird, and I guess, and that is Pac-Man 2, The New Adventures. Which, it's also out for the Sega Genesis, but it probably sounds better on Super Nintendo. But, Next up, and this is a game that has been also put out for the Nintendo Wii, and that is Super Mario All-Stars, which this is the copy I've had for... Actually, I only have one copy of the Super Nintendo. Actually, no, I don't. I actually have a box copy of Super Mario All-Stars as well. But this is the only one I'm going to show. This is the one I had for many years, for a lot... Probably... My mom may have gotten this when she got the Super Nintendo many years ago. And she just let me have it. Up next is Super Mario Kart. This probably is not as good as F-Zero, though, and that's probably due to the controls. But the games did get... I think maybe the games did improve on the controls a lot over the years after this one. Up next is kind of a hard game to find, I guess. And this is a hard game to beat, too, and that is Super Mario RPG, The Legend of the Seven Stars. Which is hard, but I believe Majestic Ultra Matt has this for his Super Nintendo collection. Up next is a game that probably came with a lot of Super Nintendos back when it first came out in 1991. Super Mario World. Well, I was going to say, it's Super Mario World. Up next is a game that is really well known, and I believe my friend NG2C Network and one of his friends did a video of this game, and that is Super Metroid. Yes, though, this is the Player's Choice Nintendo Million Seller version, which... But this is still a good game, I guess. But I also have Metroid Prime Trilogy for the Wii. Up next is probably the best beat-em-up ever. Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time. Based off of the arcade game of the same name. Except I think in the arcade version you could play 4 players. This one you can probably only play 2. But it's a good game. Up next, another movie-based game, and I think this may have been the first game I posted on YouTube when I reviewed it for the first time, and that is Toy Story, which I also have on Sega Genesis. Actually, I think that may have been out of order, but anyway, oh well. Next up, Wheel of Fortune, which B. Jockert has done games of this on YouTube. I believe BJMTV Canada is doing a run for this as well, maybe. And he's doing a run for this next game, too. And that is the deluxe edition of Wheel of Fortune. This particular copy I did get with the box, but years ago, I think years ago, like 6 years ago or something like that, when I picked up this copy, I think may have, the box and the manuals and stuff may have been thrown away. So, now all I have left is the cartridge. That should not have happened. Oh well. Can't do anything about it now, though. Up next, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? This is not based off of the game show of the same name. I actually think the game show was probably based on a PC game of the same name. And then there came a Super Nintendo version. There may also be an NES version. And I think there was an NES version of Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego. And there's probably a Super Nintendo version as well of that. Up next is Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island, which is the first Yoshi's Island game. Probably the best one, too. There's also Yoshi's Island DS and a Game Boy Advance remake of Yoshi's Island. And there's also, for the 3DS, Yoshi's New Island. And Yoshi's New Island and Yoshi's Island, the first game, I have beaten. DS, I have not, though. I don't think. And the last game is The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. The original version. This game did get remade for the Game Boy Advance. And the Game Boy Advance remake also had 4 swords, I believe, which you had to play multiplayer in order to beat that game. And there you have it for my Super Nintendo collection. And I'll see y'all for my next video, which will be my Nintendo 64 collection, 2016 edition. Stay tuned for that.